Welcome, everyone. If I may have your attention, please. My name is Arjan Dunnewind. I'm the director of the Impakt Festival. Tonight will be in English because we have many international guests. The focus of the Impakt Festival 2013 is capitalism, for obvious reasons, of course. According to some, it's the only economic system that seems to work. According to others, it's as good as dead. Fact is that since 2008, the capitalist ideology has come under fire more than ever. Much of what we have considered a given is being discussed anew. We are being faced with complex dilemmas whereby their solution often immediately form new problems. This year, Impakt has invited a number of different curators to develop their outlook on this topical problem. The historical foundations of the festival has been laid by German curator Florian Wüst. He presents a film program that includes views from the past and the present and alternates avant-garde with propaganda and documentary films. The festival exhibition is by British curator Benjamin Fallon, and it reveals, among other things, the talent with which capitalism sells itself and what the system's influence is on social ties. The Amsterdam collective Monarch consists of 3 people. They focus on the concept of labor optimization from the Homo Sovieticus to cuppa soup. Florian Wüst, unfortunately, has to be in London tonight, but he will be here tomorrow to introduce the various film programs he curated. This year, the opening program will be moderated by Keulemans. Keulemans is the artistic director of the Tolhuistuin in Amsterdam. He grew up in Baghdad, Iraq. In 1984, he founded the literary bookshop Perdu in Amsterdam. During the 90s, he worked at the Bali Center for Culture and Politics in Amsterdam. He has published books, fiction and non-fiction, and has published numerous articles on art, social movement, migration, music, cinema, and war for national newspapers. Please welcome Keulemans.
Thank you so much, Arjan. And at this very urgent, vital, and highly ambitious edition of the Impakt Festival, we're gonna take you on a very quick tour, 90 minutes tour, throughout the festival of the next few days. So we're gonna see about 10 curators and artists, see bits and pieces of their work and catch quick comments from them on their work and how they do it. To begin with, I'd like to introduce you to the curator of the exhibition at the BAC. His name is Benjamin Fallon. He's a curator, writer and designer. Benjamin Fallon, please join me on stage.
Could we get the... So, yes, hi. I'm the curator of To the Reader, this exhibition which is happening at BAC, kind of just down the road. Now, I suppose kind of this exhibition is grounded in the understanding of kind of capitalism as being a social relation and not necessarily an object which we can look at kind of from an external viewpoint, but something which is kind of there mediating kind of our lives. I guess there are kind of 3 themes that run through it. The construction of the individual in capital, which I think is a kind of very pressing kind of concern, and how this relates on kind of a collective kind of outlook on the world. Secondly, the question of labour, which is picked up also in Monique's programme, and I think probably where capital makes itself most apparent to us. And then thirdly, it is this kind of this question of the production of kind of an image of efficiency, which capital does, which maybe isn't so efficient. And I'm just going to talk through 2 works and kind of hope that you go and see the exhibition over the next 4 days. So this work is by the Capital Drawing Group, who are John Russell, Dean Kenning, Enda de Berke, and Andrew Cooper. They're all based in London, and I guess are kind of mid to late 40s, have all had kind of artistic practices for quite a while. And I guess they all come from a kind of a leftist, kind of politicized kind of practice. And And I suppose, along with a lot of other people after 2008, they became interested in the work of Marx and kind of his economic treatise, Das Kapital, and how he kind of analysed the world. And they got together and they started reading this, collectively trying to work through it, bringing in their own kind of perspectives. And then from this, they started producing these drawings as a kind of a further way to analyse this kind of the system, the structure, relating kind of what Marx was talking about to more contemporary methods of kind of capital accumulation. And so these are kind of some of the examples. So, I mean, they're quite fun. And this is kind of maybe something that's quite important to the exhibition, is that there's a sense of humour in dealing with this kind of a very complex subject. And as well as producing the works which are installed in back, we translated certain sections into Dutch, and these are kind of posted around town. They're posted in these poster sites, so they'll appear and disappear. Maybe you'll catch them over the kind of next few days. The other aspect is we did a tour with them. This is 3 of the artists who were here, and they kind of spoke about this process.
Ben, that's 3 minutes.
Okay, this is very short. So I'm going to rush through this very quickly. This is Marika Troy Lee. I was kind of worried that I would talk very quickly being a native speaker, so... but anyway, this is Marika Troy Lee, who has been working here for 5 weeks in the lead up to the exhibition. She's a Swedish artist. She supports herself in kind of flexible labour in the postal service in Sweden, and she's been subject to its flexibilisation as it becomes a kind of privatised force. And she came here, she spoke with postal workers who are kind of undergoing similar processes at the moment, and she's produced these carvings which mix the language of those who are going through these processes of privatisation with the language of post-NL, the newly privatised kind of, or relatively newly privatised postal service here. And then just finally, there's a publication which accompanies it. 2 of the writers are here. It's a bargain at €2. Chris has a copy there. And so I guess that's probably my 4 minutes. So.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Fallon. And we're allowed to have 2.5 more minutes of talk here. It's really an impossibly short tour of the festival, so what we're doing here actually is forcing you to go out in the next few days and go and see the real thing, like the exhibition that you've done at Buck. This question that the Impakt Festival poses, capitalism, catch-22, the only system we know, but it's crashing. How on earth do you attack this? Do you approach this huge question in order to turn it into an exhibition?
Well, that's kind of it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, I suppose I have a practice which is interested in the question of kind of politicized practice and artistic practice which deals with these questions. I think it's maybe not as huge as it's often portrayed. I think that it is something which is very real, very imminent to our lives, and we have a kind of responsibility and a necessity to kind of think about it and not take this kind of position that there is no alternative. There are alternatives, but I mean, we probably need to build these collectively. And the exhibition is not pointing towards a completely alternative system, but it's maybe geared more towards what Marx might call class consciousness, of kind of an understanding of our position within a system to then maybe try and build something.
It's a rich exhibition. It's playful at times. It's also very human. The role of human beings is not erased automatically as it is being done in the system so often. Can you comment on that finally, the emphasis on the human being inside the whole system?
Well, I mean, I kind of think that that's a very important aspect, because it is what affects us kind of on, you know, without wishing to be like a humanist, but, you know, it is something which impacts the way we feel, the way we kind of interact one-on-one, you know, when we have this idea of competition kind of placed into our kind of social relations, then, and so I think it is from this perspective that we need to start and kind of start to understand things.
Okay. Thank you, as human beings. Thank you very much, Benjamin Fallon. So the booklet is here. The exhibition is absolutely worth spending a lot of time, 3 hours at least, to go and look at the work. One of the artists included in this exhibition is also here, and I would like to invite him now with me on stage, Hivaka. Hello, Hiva. Hivaka, originally from Iraqi Kurdistan now.
Yes.
Then he studied in Rotterdam flamenco guitar. And then he moved to Berlin, where he's now based as a visual artist. And this is one of the works included in the exhibition To the Reader. One room apartment. Hiva, can you explain us what we're seeing here?
This was an outcome of different questions where I hope I will not exceed the 4 minutes. Different questions where I collected also through YouTubing actually very much, because I'm not that much into reading, but into YouTubing, and a lot of lectures which which I saw also. One of the things which I really was interested, like from Naomi Klein, where she talks about the Iraq War as neoliberal project. And it was really very catchy for me, so I started to dig around that also. And I was just tracing that what we had also in 2003. And so that's how we see the symptomatic of phrasing this kind of individualism also, where people were fetishizing in the 80s or the 70s. And that also...
In Iraq in the 70s and 80s, people were focused on the individualism.
Exactly. So I was very surprised by that fact when I made my last documentary, which I didn't finish, about the existentialist scene in Kurdistan of Iraq. You know, they had like working a lot on. They had a lot of impacts as reaction to the Communist Party, which was in power for many years with the Iraqi government.
So they started reading Sartre and Camus and the existentialists.
Exactly. So, and you have these two groups of individualists, and from the 70s are different. And ironically, they never took Kierkegaard, for example, which is more, you know, believing in God. But no, they just took the atheistic way. And I thought, then through this research also I developed also other projects like Chicago Boys, which is a 70s revival band around neoliberal economy, and, you know, discussion group also in an informal way. But I was very much interested in that thing when I saw this house also as one of the symptoms how people wanted to. I mean, after 2003 or during the 80s also war. Sorry, I don't want to mix it, because also one key thing I want to talk about is putting their backs in the Middle East. The Middle Eastern governments of all countries, they closed the doors toward the Soviet Union and they opened the door towards the West, and that was the end of the 80s, and all the dramas came after the 80s. So,
if I get it right, this house that you found on the Iraqi-Iranian border,
right?
It's built by and for one man.
Yes.
And you regard this, and it's been included in the exhibition, as a symbol of, let's say, existentialist-inspired individualism post-2003.
Oh, it is very interesting. Thanks for the question, because you will let me also at that point where that fetishizing of individualism was used also by the different Western medias. Also, like after, for example, Rumsfeld's visit in 1983, many films came to Baghdad, and through the TV we were seeing how ballet dancers from the Soviet Union, when they go to the West, and they come back, they dance in a more individual way. So for us was always...
And 2003, of course, for a lot of Iraqis, they thought, okay, now we're going to be capitalists, we're going to be free, we're going to be individual, we're going to buy whatever we like.
Exactly. So
and we're going to have a house for one's own instead of sharing it with the whole family and the big community.
Exactly, like you see the symptoms of small, like one room apartment, and you can see also small pots. You don't have to cook for many people, But I mean, I was just interested in these small things also, like.
Great. Well, I mean, it's beautiful and telling work about one man and his one-man house. Just very quickly, you're also showing a film in the Impakt Festival.
Yes, tomorrow.
What's the title?
This Lemon Taste of Apple.
This Lemon Taste of Apple. It's tomorrow at?
Tomorrow at 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your question. Thank you.
You see what I mean? You have encyclopedia-like people here, and all of them are expected just to show you this little glimpse of what they're about. Now, I would like to go to the part where we'll focus very quickly on a few of the films that are being shown in the Florian Wust curated program called Crude Economy. And to begin with, I'd like to welcome on stage the Belgian artist duo Vermeer and Keulemans. Welcome. We're gonna see a few fragments from your film that's been shown in the Impakt Festival, from the film The Residents. Can you tell us what we're going to see right now?
We're going to see a fragment of a Chinese architect who we filmed during our 6-month stay in China in 2009 and 10. And he's a real architect, but we asked him to play himself, and we also added some fictional elements. And I think we can tell later more about these elements when we've seen the fragment.
Okay, let's go and have a look at a fragment from The Residents.
对住户来说，艺术功能是个标志，暗示他有开阔未知领域、革新能量，有着成为内行、享有特权的精英阶层一部分所需的勇气。这种气场归功于可以在经济和艺术中都存在的从无中变钱的让人费解的能力。
Between green walls of velvet leaves, straight walks where artful shadows please. Waterfalls spanning the.
这个住户是谁？他想要什么？住户的个人价值由股票市场的涨跌衡量。住户通过将自己和这个项目取得联系，他可以既是股票市场的投机者，同时又是艺术的赞助人。居所将成为他优雅品味的里程碑。不是他对今后的信仰，而是他对现在当下经济活动的信仰，打开了住户通往永生的希望。高大宽敞的厂房，废弃的铁门和管道，墙上昔日的革命标语，所有那些工厂里独特的工业元素，都已成为到处 loft 生活方式的标志性元素。这种变废为宝的想法来源于纽约的SOHO区，但现在受到世界各地的热烈响应。 因此，从我的观点看来，如果你能匆匆的造几个仓库，几乎花不了什么钱，然后入驻一帮艺术家，而不是仓库货物，等着看地价飙升吧，你有了低投入高回报的地产点金术项目。这个地方是品牌包装出来的，今天展示什么无关紧要。这样的场所所提供的创意和消费、民族文化和异国风情、咖啡和文化批评之中的一切。
前面蹲低一点，预备，开始。
Right, a very impossibly quick fragment from a complex film and a thought-provoking film. This artist-architect who is explaining that art and economy have a lot in common because they both are able to conjure money out of nothing. Who is he talking to?
Yeah, you got it. No, he's talking to his assistant in his office, and he's talking about his client. And we want to explain a little bit more about his client for the people who will watch our film on Sunday, because that is a really complex thing.
It is.
And so the client is a rich investor, and this investor has asked this Chinese architect to design a house for his afterlife. Since in China there is a whole thing about the afterlife. They burn paper objects like paper computers and everything, so it can go to the grandparents or whatever in their afterlife. They send money to bank accounts in the afterlife. So it's a really rich thing that is there. And this investor is interested in that, and he wants a house for the afterlife. But of course, we didn't want to design something obvious. Since he's an investor, the artist and architect is designing a financial vehicle, a financial tool. And you will see in the 10 minutes in the beginning of the film. So what you see is the financial market, a currency market, who is editing that part of the film. And we had it also made in an installation where the currency market was connected in real time to that film. So it was the real investors all over the world doing their investments and making the film, and also at the same time this financial vehicle that was this man's villa for the afterlife.
Interesting. Here in Utrecht we were only able to see the single screen version.
Yeah.
Ronnie, finally this other character.
Sorry.
This other character, we've seen her a couple of times here, the blonde woman. Who is she?
She is Lady Credit.
Lady Credit.
Lady Credit is a character from The Review. The Review is one of the first magazines, and it was written by Daniel Defoe, whom you all know as the author of Robinson Crusoe. He was also a journalist, or what is like the beginning of journalism, and he published his own review. And in that review, he made a lot of articles and comments on credit and paper currency, which at the time were introduced in the economy. Basically, there was a lot of dispute about this because some people thought it would ruin the economy, others thought it would be a good thing. And because of the hysteria, or the connection between hysteria and the female sex, credit in Defoe's discourse was lady credit. She was not reliable, she was not rational, and she was very volatile.
She looks pretty rational here, actually.
Well, actually, in the film, she takes on all the other parts, all the parts that surround this investor, because the investor is a very rich person. She has a lot of servants, secretaries, whatever he needed, she was there.
Lady Credit is always on our side.
Exactly.
We can't get away from her.
No way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Vermeer en Heremans. Go and see the film, and we've been lucky to have them here live with us today, because I was checking your travel schedule, and you're traveling more than all of us together. You are. Anyway, right now, we've heard from a few of the curators and a few of the artists who have been brave enough to dive deep into the capitalism and its crises, but how exactly did we get there? Well, one of the films on screen during this festival is pretty essential. It's done by David Harvey. The Crisis of Capitalism is an 11-minute animated explanation after which we will all understand in which dire circumstances we are and how we got there.
Okay, so we've been through this crisis, and there are all sorts of explanatory formats out there, and it's interesting to look at the different genres. One genre is that it's all about human frailty. I mean, Alan Greenspan took refuge in the fact it's human nature. He said you can't do anything about that. But there's a whole world of explanations that kind of say it's the predatory instincts, it's the instincts for mastery, it's the delusions of investors and the greed and all the rest of it. So there's a whole range of discussion of that. And of course, the more we learn about the daily practices on Wall Street, we kind of figure there's a great deal of truth in all of that. The second genre is that there's institutional failures. The regulators were asleep at the switch, the shadow banking system innovated outside of their purview, etc., 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 and therefore the institutions have to be reconfigured, and it has to be a global effort by the G20, something of that kind. So we look at the institutional level and say that has failed and that has to be reconfigured. The third genre is to say everybody was obsessed with a false theory. They read too much Hayek and believed in the efficiency of markets, and it's time we actually got back to something like Keynes, or we took seriously Hyman Minsky's theory about the inherent instability of financial activities. The next genre is that it has cultural origins. Now, we don't hear that much in the United States, but if you were in Germany and France, many people there would kind of say, this is an Anglo-Saxon disease, and it's nothing to do with us. I happened to be in Brazil when it was going on, and Lula was kind of saying, well, first off, he was saying, oh, thank God the United States has been disciplined by the equivalent of the IMF. We've been through it 8 times in the last 25 years, and now it's their turn. Fantastic, said Lula, and all the Latin Americans I knew, until it hit hit them, which it does, and then they kind of change their tune a little bit. So there's a kind of a way of which it became cultural, and you can see that by the way in which this whole Greek thing is being handled. The way the German press is saying, well, it's the Greek character, it's defects in the Greek character, and there's a lot of rather nasty stuff going on around that, but actually there are some cultural features which have led into it. For instance, the US fascination with home ownership, which is supposedly a deep cultural value. So 68% of US households are homeowners. It's only 22% in Switzerland. Of course, it's a cultural value in the United States that's been supported by the mortgage interest tax deduction, which is a huge subsidy. It's been promoted since the 1930s. Very explicitly in the 1930s, it was built up because the theory was that debt-encumbered homeowners don't go on strike. And then there's a kind of notion that there's a failure of policy, and that policy has actually intervened. And there's a funny kind of alliance emerging between the Glenn Beck wing of Fox News and the World Bank, both of whom say the problem is too much regulation of the wrong sort. So there are all of these ways, and all of them have a certain truth. And skilled writers will take one or other of those perspectives and build a story and actually write a very plausible kind of story about this. And I thought to myself, well, what kind of plausible story can I write which is none of the above? Which is one of the things I always think to myself. And it's not hard to do, particularly if you're coming from a Marxist perspective, because, there aren't many people who try to do this analysis from a Marxist perspective. And I was really clued into this by this thing that happened at the London School of Economics about a year and a half ago, when Her Majesty the Queen asked the economists, how come you guys didn't see this thing coming? I mean, she didn't say it exactly that way, but, it's just the sentiment. And they got very upset, and she actually called the Governor of the Bank of England and said, how come you didn't see it coming? And then the British Academy put forward got all together, all of these economists, and they came up with this fabulous letter to Her Majesty. And it was actually astonishing. It said, well, many dedicated people, intelligent, smart, spent their lives working on aspects of this thing very, very seriously, but the one thing we missed was systemic risk. And you say, what? And then it went on to talk about a politics of denial and all the rest of it. So I thought, well, systemic risk, I can translate it into the Marxian thing. You're talking about the internal contradictions of capital accumulation. And maybe I should write a thing about the internal contradictions of capital accumulation and try to figure out the role of crises in the whole history of capitalism and what's specific and special about the crisis this time around. And there were two ways in which I thought I would do that. One was to sort of look at what's happened since 1970s to now. And the thesis there is that in many ways the form of this current crisis is dictated very much by the way we came out of the last one. That the problem back in the 1970s was excessive power of labour in relationship to capital. That therefore the way out of the crisis last time was to discipline labour. And we know how that was done. It was done by offshoring, it was done by, Thatcher and Reagan, and it was done by neoliberal doctrine, it was done all kinds of different ways. But by 1985 or 86, the labour question had essentially been solved for capital. It had access to all of the world's labour supplies. Nobody in this particular instance has cited greedy unions as the root of the crisis. Nobody in this instance is saying it has anything to do with excessive power of labour. If anything, it's the excessive power of capital, and in particular the excessive power of finance capital, which is the root of the problem. Now, how did that happen? Well, we've been since the 1970s in a phase of what we call wage repression. That wages have remained stagnant. The share of wages in national income right throughout the OECD countries has steadily fallen. It's even steadily fallen in China, of all places. So that there are less and less being paid out in wages. Well, wages turn out to be also the money which buys goods. So if you diminish wages, then you've got a problem with where's your demand going to come from? And the answer was, well, get out your credit cards. We'll give everybody credit cards. So we'll overcome, if you like, the problem of effective demand by actually pumping up the credit economy. And American households, British households have all roughly tripled their debt over the last 20, 30 years. And a vast amount of that debt, of course, has been within the housing market. And out of this comes a theory which is very, very important, that capitalism never solves its crisis problems. It moves them around geographically. And what we're seeing right now is a geographical movement of that. Everybody says, well, okay, everything's beginning to recover in the United States, and then Greece goes bang, and everybody says, what about the pigs, you know? And it's interesting. You had a finance crisis, which is in the financial system. You've sort of half solved that, but at the expense of a sovereign debt crisis. Actually, if you look at the accumulation process of capital, you see a number of limits and a number of barriers. And there's a wonderful language that Marx uses in the Grundrisse, where he talks about the way in which capital cannot abide a limit. It has to turn it into a barrier which it then circumvents or transcends. And then when you look at the accumulation process, you look at where the barriers and limits might lie. And the simple way to look at it is to say, look, the typical circulation process of accumulation goes like this. You start with some money, you go into the market and you buy labour, power and means of production, and you put them to work with a given technology and organisational form. You create a commodity which you then sell for the original money plus a profit. Now, you then take part of the profit and you recapitalise it into an expansion for very interesting reasons. Now, there are two things about this. One is there are a number of barrier points in here. How is the money got together in the right place at the right time in the right volume? And that takes financial ingenuity. So the whole history of capitalism has been about financial innovation. And financial innovation has the effect of also empowering the financiers. And the excessive power of the financiers can sometimes, they do get greedy, no question about it. And if you look at financial profits in the United States, they were soaring after 1990. They're going up like this. Profits in manufacturing were coming down like this. And you could see the imbalance. In this country, I think the way in which this country has sided with the City of London against British manufacturing since the 1950s onwards has had very serious implications for the economy of this country. You've actually screwed industry in order to keep, financiers happy. Any sensible person right now would join an anti-capitalist organisation. And you have to. Because otherwise we're going to have the continuation. And notice it's a continuation of all sorts of negative aspects. For instance, the racking up of wealth. You would have thought the crisis would have stopped that. Actually, more billionaires emerged in India last year than ever. They doubled last year. The wealth of the rich, I just read something this morning, in this country has accelerated. Just last year, what happened was the leading hedge fund owners got personal remunerations of $3 billion each in 1 year. Now, I thought it was obscene and insane a few years ago when they got 250 million. But they're now hauling in 3 billion. Now, that's not a world I want to live in, and if you want to live in it, be my guest. I don't see us debating and discussing this. I don't have the solutions. I think I know what the nature of the problem is. And unless we're prepared to have a very broad-based discussion that gets away from, the normal kind of pablum you get in the political campaign and, everything's going to be okay here next year if you vote for me, it's crap. You should know it's crap and say it is. And we have a duty, it seems to me, those of us who are academics and seriously involved in the world, to actually change our mode of thinking.
David Harvey's Crises of Capitalism. It's a fascinating piece of work, and you can find it on YouTube. So if you want to see it again, step by step, go and look at it again, or during this festival, of course. I had to think while watching this of Benjamin Fallon's position that capitalism and its crises are not impossible to grasp. You can grasp them, you can actually think about alternatives, and you should. Maybe it's our duty to do so. Now, Livia Castro and Olafur Olafsson are here. They will join us in a minute, but first let's watch the first few minutes of their film Lobbyists, another force in this whole game, this economical game we're living in.
solitary tree stands in front of the European Parliament in Brussels, dwarfed by a giant backdrop of steel and glass. Below the tree, an offering to Parliament by a group of lobbyists is written: important issues must be resolved by discussion and decision, with determination, patience and dedication. A well-placed reminder of the democratic values at the heart of the European project? Perhaps.
You want our bonuses. We know what we're talking about. We are experts.
A decade ago, Parliament was the site of a determined fight over one such issue. The right to patent life. With animal rights campaigners and religious groups facing off the pharmaceutical industry, Britain's chief rabbi and a lead bishop accused the industry of trying to play God. The legislation on the table, claimed Greenpeace, would reduce animals to objects to be used as industrial machinery. Together, the opposition bombarded Brussels with posters of newborns bearing the slogan, "No patents on life."
They've been also downplaying the problem, so we don't think that they have a good track record of advising the Commission.
Faced with this onslaught of opposition, the pro-patent pharmaceutical industry turned to a British lobbyist, Paul Adamson, to swing parliamentary opinion their way.
Adamson persuaded 30 terminally ill, wheelchair-bound patients
who might benefit from biotechnology research
to greet members of the Parliament
crucial votes.
Before crucial votes. Wearing loud yellow t-shirt, bearing the slogan "Patents for Life," their cry was "No patents, no cure." So they're lobbying offensive one
in summer of 1998.
In the summer of 1998.
And the Life Patent Directive 432 to 78 in favor.
In favor.
Give my regards to your Secretary General. Thank you for the email. And we will follow up soon. Thank you. Bye. Well, President Turkey is on board.
Let's go. What's your
What will I have to do for
Portugal.
A decade on, lobbying is now commonplace in Brussels. With more and more legislation coming out of Europe, organisations have long recognised the potential impact EU rulemaking can have on their operations. And in an expanded union of 27 countries, a small army of lobbyists, 15,000 or so, is busy fighting their case.
Livia Castro and Olafur Olafsson, please join us here on stage. Just to begin with, and this is not going to count for 3 minutes. Why the singing voiceover?
Why doesn't this count within the 3 minutes?
Because it's a bonus question.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's accepted.
Because we wanted to make a music video.
Mm-hmm. And it worked?
Guess so,
Mm-hmm.
partly.
Can you tell me, and the people here, more about what happens after these opening scenes in your film?
What happens is that we follow what it has been introduced here at the beginning, which is two groups. I would say two groups, but it's much more groups, but two groups. One group is the lobbyists that are working for the capital and for the industry, and the other are the counter lobbyists and the NGOs that are working for the public interests.
And the environment.
And the environment, yeah.
Sorry?
All that public interest. The environment.
The environment, yeah. Those are two groups of lobbyists you're focusing on in this long music video, let's say. This is very recent material, I believe.
2009.
2009. Is everything we see documentary, or is it partly, how do you say, staged?
No, it's all filmed. There's nothing staged. I mean, apart from life is an endless stage. I mean, you see endless staged situations, meetings, conferences, and so on.
Especially there, because it's a very mediated environment, so we actually were very much conscious and busy with that stage and mediated environment, which we all know from the television and the news.
Well, apart from like a short shot of the lobbyist sitting in his office in the chair, looking into the camera, I mean that's staged.
For sure.
Yeah.
But as a filmmaker, you're immediately part of the whole environment, part of the whole, let's say, lobby reality.
Yeah, that's why maybe we start with the beginning of the video is actually the construction of a demonstration, which is not actually a demonstration for people, but a demonstration which takes place as representation for the media, which is the counter-lobbyists, different NGOs and organizations, which called up the media, so that's very much how it works also, and stage kind of a theater.
A photo shoot.
A photo shoot for the media.
Actually, so. And you joined that?
Yes.
Yeah. It's only after that the images you shoot also become a kind of commentary on the whole lobbying spectacle.
we were following in the end 4 lobbyists, a little bit. I mean, the 2 from the industry, let's say, those were really 2 concrete persons. In the case of the counter lobbyists, that were also 2 concrete persons, a woman from Greenpeace, but in the case of Friends of the Earth Europe, there was we were following also more people than only Paul that was there. So there was more of, you already could see there anyway that was more of a group also, though there was a kind of a head figure or a leading figure, but it was not as much as in the other places. But I mean, we filmed for about 4 months, I think, probably about 70-something hours, and and to answer again still the question on the music, it was also because we had done another experiment or another work using music and journalism or journalistic article before, and that was because we really wanted to experiment with portraiture and portraying on labor or people at work, and without it being either, because we had done 2 portraits like that before, which were like kind of no comment portraits in a way, but we wanted now to introduce text and information, but without it being in a spoken form or interview form or kind of rationalizing, slowing down and paste and so on. So we decided for this, in a way it's like 3 things clashed together at the same time. It's music, journalism and video.
It's a fascinating result. When can we see the film?
When is it? Friday?
This Friday, I think at around 5 or something like that. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Now you have to
this
check
Friday,
it in the program.
Around 5. Be there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now for the short trailer of a film many of us have been looking forward to by Sophie Fiennes and starring Slavoj Žižek.
Ideology is not simply imposed on ourselves. We, in a way, enjoy our ideology. We are not dealing here with something which simply concerns the fragile psychology of a distorted person, what Travis in Taxi Driver is. It has something to do with ideology. We should ask, what role does the iceberg hitting the ship play in the development of the love story? The tragedy of our predicament when we are within ideology is that when we think that we escape it into our dreams, at that point we are within ideology. I may be freezing to death, but you will never get rid of me. All the ice in the world cannot kill a true idea.
My suggestion would be skip this film during the festival, because you're going to be able to see it all over after. Focus on the films that only Impakt offers you. Still, it's obviously going to be a fascinating, bumpy ride with the old Slavoj Žižek. Now, we're going to the third curator, in this case a team of curators called MONIC. MONIC is a laboratory for investigation, imagination and storytelling. We, they say, are fascinated by the triumph and tragedy of modern life. We make texts, objects and event. Vincent Schipper of MONIC is not here, but Edwin Gardner and Christian Fruneau are. And I believe Edwin Gardner is now going to explain in a few minutes what they have done for Impakt through work songs.
Yes, I'll try.
Coordination and timing of each man's exertion was critical. One member of the gang, the caller, synchronized the group's physical movements with his voice, ensuring safety and pacing while spiritually uplifting the men at their work.
So we called our program Work Songs, because we think in a kind of intriguing and paradoxical way it brings together a way of organizing work, but also how we try to give meaning to work, and through our work we give meaning to the world. And here in the fragment you still saw kind of an old image of how we'd like to think about labor. So actually labor has something to do with the body and using your body to make things. But what increasingly is happening is that there's two forces, abstraction and fragmentation. So the work we do and how we relate to the world is increasingly abstracted or becoming more abstract, and our labor itself is fragmented into smaller and smaller bits. For example, the factory line where the people from Ford, 5 people made one car, and now you have thousands of people doing minuscule little tasks, which are now also replaced by robots. So this is one of the first things we will address coming Saturday in the program Fruits of Our Labor. We invited these 4 speakers, which will investigate this exchange between technology, meaning and work. Then a famous speech.
The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works.
Well, I don't have to
Greed clarifies, cuts through, and
play this all out, but the thing is with, we will investigate cinema, Hollywood, image culture, together with Reimer van Tuinen and Gabi Keizer, they will investigate and ask questions about how is capitalism portrayed, personalized, and dealt with in our visual culture. So either it's a personification, or it is a system, and there's victims, and so all these things are played out in our popular media, and what does that tell us of how we deal with capitalism? Then we have another program. Saccades is, by the way, also Saturday evening. This is happening Friday evening with 2 lectures by Marcel Mars and Femke Snelting. And the whole weekend there will be a hackathon in Kapitaal, which is called Free Libraries for Every Soul. And in a way, with this hackathon is also, we're staging an alternative. So this is a kind of new emerging form of how people organize themselves in labor, which is mixed with commercial, voluntary, for money, not for money, and they work together to realize a common. And this common, in this case, is Free Libraries for Every Soul. And then we also
That's 4 minutes.
Okay, and we try to come very close to Utrecht, together with Expodium and 4 fictional characters, Bertus, Timothy, Nusra, and Sandra. They will tell something about the metabolism of Utrecht and how the exchange of goods and then money tells us something about how we are also part of this machine, but how it also becomes very personal.
Thank you very much, Edwin Gardner. And may I ask you to join us here, and Christian Fruno as well, one of the other members of Monic, to link to what Edwin just said at the very end. Christian, Monic and you took as one of the questions for the program here at Impakt. Does our work make us more or less human?
Well, I think what Edwin just mentioned is that the way we work and in which context we work becomes more and more part of this really big global economy.
Yeah.
So the part we play in that economy becomes, because the economy itself becomes bigger and bigger, so our part becomes smaller and smaller comparatively. So, in some way, and that's something that we found interesting, we have to relate to this more. We function every day in this very abstract, abstract surrounding. So, in a way, it dehumanizes it.
Yeah.
But that's an old theme. I mean,
as curators, you've chosen for work and artists that are searching for a human way of working, or bringing work back to the human scale.
Well, we just wondered if, capitalism in its many variations, the way it shapes the surrounding in which we work, and like Benjamin said earlier, and through that work, how we shape our self-image. And we were wondering how that happens, but also if we think of alternatives for capitalism, maybe we should start with the fact, how do we want to work, and how does work actually work? And through that framework, we chose makers who reflected on that, but also whose poetics somehow told us more than we could tell you guys.
We're going to see 3 of those artists now. So thank you for now, Christian, Edwin. Because after this program at the bar, we'll meet a couple of artists. We're going to see them here too. But tonight opened, the Impakt Festival opened tonight with Melle Smets and Joost van Onna's Fantastic work, Smarty Turtle 1. Let's look at a short trailer first. Great, slow but steady, Turtle 1. It's parked right outside of the theater, so you see it later. And Melle Smets is with us. Please join us, Melle. Joost van Onna and Teun Vonk, Tony Spark are also here, but you'll be able to see them tomorrow night again on Neude. Melle, this is somehow, I think I understand why this is the opening act of the festival, because you're touching a lot of essential questions about the capitalist system in a very visual and even funny way. Did you design this car?
For the festival?
No.
No.
In Ghana?
Apparently, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know anything about cars, basically. But once we were there, we planned to make a car. That was the idea. But actually not to build a car, but to find out how does this place work. I mean, you have to imagine, you saw a bit of it. There are 200,000 people working in this Mad Max world. So for us, that was like a big blur. And we thought, how are we going to make sense of this? So that was our aim, to find out how it works. And then we thought, well, just order a car and follow the track, and then we'll find out. So that's how it started. But then they started to look at us like, okay, well, you are here to build a car, so design one. And then I was like, oh, okay. And well, then we took off, and in 3 months, it became a roller coaster. And finally, I became a car designer. Yeah.
Because the thing is, they don't design cars.
No, they repair them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And try to copy existing models.
Yeah, and with a reason. Because now I'm a car designer, I can tell. If you design a car, you have to know what you're doing. Because, for example, the turtle, it's not by purpose that it's slow but steady. Because if you speed up above 40 kilometers, the car starts to jump. It's like a turtle, you know, they don't like speeding. And that's because it's very difficult to build a car, because there are so many forces inside a car. You have to calculate things, which we didn't. And there was also nobody around to help us with this. So, yeah, that makes it difficult.
But you did actually drive 500-600 miles with this car, actually, in Ghana.
Yeah, but slow but steady. Yeah.
But it works.
But it works,
yeah. For a first car, you're a pretty good designer, I would say.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But what I also heard is that this model should be the first in its kind, so that they will start producing their own turtles for their own use in Ghana. Is that true?
That's what happened, yeah. But that was not our plan. It's a thing we learned, that storytelling is a big thing in Ghana. And this story started small, as well, let's build one car. But then the radio came, and then the newspaper came, and then another radio program came, and then the television came, and then, well, back and forward, and everybody was telling a little bit of a bigger story than the others. So this story took off, and the story of cars appeals to a lot of people. You know, everybody has this sort of dream ideas, or starts dreaming if you talk about a car. So it's a boy's dream to build its own car, his own car, and so this story just started to live on its own, and we actually gave a little bit of input, but it took off so well. You saw it. Even the king of Ghana came to visit us to bless the car, and then the car industry was born. But there's only one car.
Thank you very much, Mela Smets.
Okay, you're welcome.
The design is actually beautiful and full of practical details. So Mela Smets and Joost van Onna will be happy to give you a demonstration of those details later. Next up, Arne Hendricks and Joost Jan Maat. Please join me on stage. The New Tropics Bar. Joost, where can we find that?
Just outside.
Upstairs?
Upstairs in the Kicker Bar for the next 4 days. It's the latest chapter of our Academy of Work research that Arne and me have been doing for 2 years now, which basically is a research into work. Very essential part of most of our lives, and if it isn't a part of your life, it's still essential to your life. The academy is basically a school, but we don't have teachers. Arne and me are not the teachers, we are actually students. We set up a school because we want to learn about work. What was it, what is it now, what will be the future of work? Why do we wake up why do we start working at 9? Why do we drink coffee while we work? Why do we sit at desks if we want to work? These kind of questions. This is the 3rd chapter of our school. The first chapter was 2 years ago at the Design Academy in Gwangju, South Korea. We built a pretty big creative engineering machine. We wanted to make people more creative to help the Korean innovative economy to get along. We were interested in this paradox in how you can create creativity, which is a free and liberal process on the one hand, and a pretty static and solid process of economy in the first place. Last year we had a class or an episode in Gdansk on the former shipyards of Solidarnosc, historical place, so we went for the historical approach, inspired by the poet, engineer Alexei Gastev, who in the 20s, when asked by Lenin to transform rural Russia into an industrial Soviet Union, built him some kind of a training machine in which he researched the choreography of work. So from this choreography of sewing, people had to learn the new choreography. So he and we got intrigued by the sublime hammer blow and the most beautiful way to walk from one workstation to another. Now here at Impakt is the 3rd chapter. It's
let's talk
food
about
and work.
About food and work. Can we talk about food and work? Can we see the animation in the background? Yeah, right there.
Oh, I thought it was already there.
Food.
This is the work of our latest student in the Academy of Work, Jasper van den Berg.
Jasper van den Berg is also here. And a nice warm round of applause for Jasper van den Berg, please, ladies. Arne, so food and work, and that's what we see at the New Tropics bar once that we go upstairs after this program. Tell us about this bar.
Yes, it's a bar. I mean,
it works.
It's a functioning bar, and that's also what makes it nice for us to place our work inside of that environment, because people are actually working there. And we're not really interested in knowing what work is and in telling people what work is. We are really interested in, just as Joost said, investigating what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
because this is the actual Theaterkikker foyer bar.
Yeah, this is it. So
it's not a separate work of art.
No, it has its own rules and its own. Let's say we are trying to kind of make a piece there, working together with the people behind the bar, which is a very interesting somehow choreography by itself, both social as well as workflow-wise, etc., etc. But that's another thing. I guess, like Jo said, we are the students, so this is part of the investigation. Like somebody just pointed out to me when I was getting angry about something or whatever. But so the point's not so much that we want to know what work is or present our knowledge, but to unknow what work is. And to, I mean, basically work is really, I mean, let's face it, the way we are working at the moment is pretty destructive. It's not functioning for most people in the world. So we've basically built a failing system. And if we want to change anything about that system, we really have to go right back down to the basics of it. And basically forget everything we designed, everything we know, everything we've invented within that sphere, and reinvent. And so all the elements in this bar are basically to deregulate what we know. So we will find a totem that is based on a cubicle farm. We will find an eating totem thing. We will see elements like this that don't really present us with knowledge, but present us with an enigma, something that we do not understand. And from this point of departure, we want to rebuild, let's say, a confidence or maybe a desire to start working again.
Joost, would you recognize this unknowing of how we work in the Turtle 1 car project?
I don't know.
No, well, it takes a lot of confidence. I think so, yes.
So I want to make one more point. The point of departure for this project, the New Tropics Bar, was food and work. So we consider the office environment as a foodscape, and clerks and office people as people scavenging for food, from the morning coffee to the cookie jar to the water dispenser and the Friday night drinks. We're hunting for food. Food that boosts our energy, concentration skills, memory skills. The best example, of course, is the food, the coffee, the office drugs, par excellence coffee, caffeine. You all know it makes you more alert and more concentrated, but what it actually does, it triggers your fear system. It makes you stressed, and when you're stressed, you limit options, because you need to know, am I going to fight or flight this big pussycat? You limit options. So if you drink coffee in an office situation, what you get is you limit options and you go with protocol, orders, and standard procedures. It's
the office drugs.
So in this bar, we offer a range of super normal day-to-day drugs that you all take, especially when working, and explain a little bit, we want to question a bit how these nootropics, these normal nootropics, you can boost your mind and body in different kinds of work.
Exactly. We were just standing there upstairs at the bar, and by very simply, I don't know, highlighting elements of the bar that you would normally not even notice, not even think about, suddenly the whole bar becomes a kind of a theater, a kind of work of art, one that makes you think about work. It's almost time to quit this program, so all of us are invited upstairs.
And we have Friday evening drinks every day from now on, until Sunday.
Go at 5 every day.
5 o'clock.
Say again, Friday night.
Yeah, vrijmibo. I don't know the English translation.